You don't know what you signed up for. Not really. You thought you did. You filled out the paperwork, passed the psych eval, scored high enough on the ASVAB to get a choice. And you chose this. Whatever this is, they don't call it a kill squad. Nobody calls it that. There's no patch, no ceremony. No one claps when you walk into the room for the first time. You walk into a gray building on the edge of a base in North Carolina, and a man with no rank on his chest looks at you and says, "Put your bag down, you're already late." Not late, you're 3 minutes early. That's the first lesson. The first week is sleep deprivation and land navigation. You run 12 miles with a 45-pound ruck in the rain. You do it again. You do it again after that. Nobody explains why. Nobody gives you a pep talk. The instructors don't yell like the movies. They speak quietly, which is worse. When a quiet man tells you you're failing, it lands different. You fail a lot. There are 11 other guys in your intake. By the end of week 2, there are 7. You don't know where the other 4 went. You don't ask. You learn quickly that asking the wrong question here costs you more than staying quiet. You sleep 4 hours a night. You eat fast. You move constantly. Your hands start to callous in new places. Your feet develop blisters, then the blisters harden into something else. Your body is becoming a tool, and you're not sure yet if you're the one holding it, but you're still here. That means something, not everything, but something. The training shifts. Less physical destruction, more cognitive pressure. You sit in a room for 6 hours and study satellite imagery of a fictional city. They ask you to identify patterns, routine vehicle movement, foot traffic. Shift changes at a building that doesn't officially exist. You learn to see the city not as a place, but as a system. Every system has a rhythm. Your job, eventually, will be to interrupt that rhythm at the exact right moment. You learn your first breach technique in week 5. They walk you through it once. Then you do it faster. Then you do it in the dark. Then you do it in the dark with simulated gunfire and someone screaming next to you to see if your hands stay steady. Your hands shake the first time, the second time less. By the 12th time, you don't feel anything in your hands at all. That's what they're looking for. There's a guy in your group named Ray's former ranger. Quiet, compact, moves like he's conserving energy for something you can't see yet. He doesn't talk much during the day, but at night in the barracks he says one thing that sticks with you. Don't get good at this to impress anyone. Get good at this because the guy next to you needs you to be. You think about that more than you expect to. By the end of the second phase, you've qualified on 4 weapon platforms, passed 2 psychological evaluations you weren't told you were taking, and learned how to follow a target on foot through a crowded urban environment without being made. You are not an operator yet, but you are no longer civilian pretending to be one. Not a war zone. Not officially. You're in a city you won't name, in a country your orders don't mention by name either. Your support element, that's what they call it. Your job on this rotation is surveillance. You sit in a rented apartment on the 3rd floor of a building that smells like mold and diesel. You watch a street corner through a spotting scope for 9 hours a day. You log everything. The man who sells bread every morning at 6:45. The white sedan that circles the block at irregular intervals. The window on the 4th floor of the building across the street that's always dark, except on Tuesday nights. Nothing happens for 11 days. Then on day 12, a name you've been tracking for 3 weeks walks out of a door and lights a cigarette. You key your radio. 2 words. Target acquired, and then you watch. You watch what happens next. When it was over, you sat back down in your chair and looked at the empty street corner and finished your coffee. Because the bread seller was going to be there in 4 hours and you were still on the clock. That night you don't sleep. Not from trauma, not yet. Just from the awareness that something real has happened and you were part of it and the world didn't pause. Your watch kept ticking. The mission log kept running. Somewhere someone filed a report. And tomorrow you have a 9-hour shift at the same window, different cities, different targets, same process. The surveillance window, the pattern recognition, the radio call, the wait. You are getting fluent in a language that has no words, only signals and silence. You get your first direct action tasking 6 months in. It's a warehouse outside of a mid-sized city. Not large, 2 floors, 4 known personnel inside, possibly more. Your team is 6. You're not lead. You're number 4 in the stack. Your job is to clear the second room on the left and hold the staircase. The briefing takes 40 minutes. You rehearse the floor plan on blue tape laid out in a parking lot until it's in your muscle memory. You move through it slow, then medium speed, then full speed in the dark wearing your kit. The actual entry takes 11 seconds. The clearing takes 43 more. When it's done, you're standing at the top of a staircase with your back against a wall and your muzzle pointed down and your breathing is controlled. Your hands are not shaking. You note that. You remember what your hands were doing the first time in training. And you understand that something has changed in you that you can't fully measure yet. On the helicopter back, nobody says much. Ray's is sitting across from you. He's looking at the floor. Outside the open door, the sky is getting light on the horizon. He glances up, catches your eye, gives you one slow nod. That's all. They start calling you by your call sign. Not your name, not your rank, your call sign. That's when you know you've crossed something. You're no longer in the system the way regular soldiers are in the system. You can read a room from a doorway in under 2 seconds. You can do a surveillance detection route through a downtown area and identify whether you're being followed using nothing but reflections in shop windows and the rhythm of foot traffic behind you. You can control your heart rate during contact. Not always, but usually, you qualify as a primary breacher. You start teaching the entry sequences to newer guys coming through. The first time you stand on the instructor side of the blue tape, looking at 11 faces who remind you of what you looked like 3 years ago, you feel something that's hard to name. Not pride exactly. More like understanding. You understand now what the quiet man was doing when he told you that you were failing. He wasn't trying to break you. He was trying to find out what was underneath. You start running your own surveillance packages. You have 2 analysts you coordinate with, both of whom you've never met in person. They send you imagery, signals, intercepts, pattern of life data. You synthesize it and build targeting packages. You start to understand the intelligence cycle not as a concept, but as a machine you're operating. There's a night in a city in the Middle East where you're sitting on a rooftop alone for 6 hours waiting for a window to open. The city is loud below you, music somewhere, a dog barking, the smell of food from a restaurant 2 blocks over. And you think, for the first time clearly, that this is a strange life, that you have become someone who lies on rooftops in foreign countries in the dark, and this feels normal. You've now been on 14 direct action missions. You've been in 3 situations that could have gone wrong enough to end you, and they didn't. Decisions you made in the fraction of a second that you still replay sometimes when you can't sleep. You get selected for a specialized course that runs 8 weeks out of a facility in the Nevada desert. By the end of it, you understand human behavior under extreme stress in a way that very few people on Earth do. You understand how people break, how they hold, what they're protecting, what they're afraid of. The course has 12 participants, 3 wash out. You finish second overall. Man who finishes first is a woman named Chen, who does everything faster and quieter than anyone else in the room, and never seems to think she's impressive, which makes her more impressive. You develop an instinct during this period that your team leader calls situational patience. It's not the same as waiting. It's the ability to hold a decision open longer than the situation seems to allow, because you've learned that another second of data often changes everything. You have a call-out abort one night. Target moving in a vehicle, civilian pedestrians in the line of effect. You wave off the shot, the target gets away. 2 days later, intelligence locates him again and the mission completes clean. Your team leader debriefs you after. He doesn't say you did the right thing. He says, you did your job. That's better. They give you a team, 8 people, or not the most skilled person on this team. That matters. Leadership in this world doesn't look like the movies. There's a briefing, questions, adjustments, a walkthrough, and then silence. Your job as team lead is to make sure the plan accounts for what you don't know yet. You lose a man for the first time, a breacher named Walsh who you've run 2 joint missions with before. You read the message, sit with it for a moment, then go back to the map. You carry the weight of Walsh in a specific part of your chest that you've learned to separate from the working part of your mind. You go to that room eventually. You sit in it, but not yet. Maury variables, Maury stakeholders. You're now coordinating with intelligence agencies, foreign liaison partners, and occasionally officials above your pay grade. There are people who want to use your team for things your team wasn't built for. Part of your job now is managing that. You fly back to the States for a debrief that runs 4 days. You sit across from a senior official who's never been in the field and you explain why a mission that looked perfect on paper produced a different outcome than projected. He asks you what you would do differently. You think for a moment, I would have pulled Chen off the north position and put her on the vehicle route. She reads movement better than anyone I have. On the flight home, you have a layover in Atlanta. There are people around you watching football, talking about their jobs, complaining about delays. A man next to you asks where you're coming from. You say, work, travel, government stuff. He nods and goes back to his beer. You watch the gate. You can't stop watching the gate. You watch who comes in, how they're moving, whether their hands are visible. You've been doing this for so long it's not a behavior anymore. It's just how you see. The calls come less frequently now. You plan operations more than you run them. You review targeting packages prepared by people who used to be where you were. You see the mistakes clearly. The places where someone's in a hurry, where the pattern of life surveillance is thin. There are weeks where you're in an office, a real one, with a desk and a computer and a window that looks out onto a parking lot in Virginia. You get coffee from the machine in the hall. You eat lunch alone a lot, which doesn't bother you. You've always been someone who needs the silence. Ray's retired 8 months ago. You had dinner with him in a steakhouse in Fayetteville before he flew home to his family in Arizona. He looked the same, quiet, compact, a little softer around the edges in a way that looked earned rather than lost. He asked you if you were going to do it much longer. You said you didn't know. He said, you'll know. You think about that. You've been doing this for 12 years. You've run operations across 9 countries. You've stood in rooms where decisions were made that changed things you'll never be able to tell anyone. You've been wrong twice in ways that mattered and right more times than you counted. You've lost people. You've kept people alive who wouldn't have been otherwise. You've sat on rooftops in the dark so long that quiet doesn't feel like absence anymore. It feels like information. There's no dramatic final mission, no ceremony. You submit your paperwork on a Tuesday and a week later you drive off the base in a car that needs an oil change. You don't look back because there's nothing to see from a rearview mirror that tells you anything new. You're 41 years old. You move well. You sleep lightly. You still sit with your back to walls in restaurants. You still watch the door. You end up in a small house outside of Asheville, North Carolina. The elevation makes sense to you, and the town is big enough to be anonymous in but small enough to feel real. You run in the mornings. The same trail, mostly 4 miles, up through the trees and back. Sometimes you stop at the top and look out over the ridgeline. Not because it's beautiful, though it is. Because stopping and being still for a moment without a radio in your ear or a map in your hand or a decision pending is something you had to learn to do again. People ask you sometimes what you did. You say government contracting, they nod. They move on. There's a folder you keep in a fireproof box under a loose board in your closet. Inside are photographs, a small coin, the edge of a worn mission card with nothing classified on it anymore, just a date and a grid coordinate that means something only to you. You don't look at it often. You don't need to. You know what you were. You know what it cost. You know what it built. You spent 12 years learning to move through the world without being seen. Making decisions in the dark that no one would ever credit you with. Protecting things that can't be named in rooms that don't officially exist. Nobody will write your name on a building. Nobody will give a speech about you. The people who know what you did are bound by the same silence you are. And somewhere, because of decisions made in rooms like those, in cities like those, on rooftops like those, people are living lives they don't know were protected. You pour your coffee. You watch the trees. That was always the point.